The dog that followed me home finds a dog on the road and brings it home. But it won't eat, doesn't blink, and everyone who touches it has nightmares. Jack had been driving for hours when he saw something sitting in the middle of the road. It didn't move at first, but then he realized it was an animal. It was a dog, but it wasn't any ordinary dog. And Jack would soon realize that bringing the dog home would bring nothing but bad luck. It was just another day in the small town of Ashton. Everyone knew everyone else, and life seemed almost boring. Days went by without a single interesting event happening. Every night they heard strange noises coming from Shadow's room. One day, while playing with Shadow, Jack accidentally scratched it. It yelped and bit him, but not hard enough to break the skin. Still, Jack was surprised. And whenever this happened, they'd find Shadow nearby, with a strange grin on its face. "I don't know what kind of curse you are, but you have to go," he said. But the dog only laughed. It seemed like a cruel joke, but it wasn't. Shadow was actually laughing at him. They didn't know it yet, but the dog was causing all these things to happen. He thought that Shadow was friendly, but clearly it wasn't. It growled at him and ran away, hiding under the bed. They packed some food and water and drove it back to the place where they found it. But then the sun started to turn black, the sky turned green, and the trees around them started to shake. They were scared, but they had to do something, so they started to run. But when they let Shadow out of the car, it looked at them with hatred. When they turned around, they saw that a huge tree had fallen right where they were standing a moment before. Jack and Mary were exhausted, but they were also relieved. They knew that they had to get away from the forest as fast as possible, so they ran to their car and drove home. Jack and Mary screamed and tried to fight back, but they couldn't hurt the dog. It was too strong. But no matter where they went, they couldn't escape their past. Do you believe in cursed objects? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear another scary story, click on one of the videos on the screen. Thanks for watching. They were haunted by nightmares and the fear of the dark. But then they saw something even more terrifying. Shadow was standing behind the tree with a strange glow around its body. It seemed like a demon, and Jack and Mary knew that they had made a big mistake. It let out a loud bark, which sounded like a curse. Then it disappeared into the forest. They sounded like screams and howls, but they couldn't be sure. Maybe it was just a dream. You're just imagining things. It's just a dog, she said. But she was wrong. I think it's all in your heads, he said. But they knew it wasn't. Their house was destroyed and their garden was in ruins. But they didn't care about that. They had survived, and that was all that mattered. It said that sometimes these objects were brought into a house without anyone realizing it. And whenever they looked at each other, they saw the fear in each other's eyes. They knew that they would never forget what they had gone through. Its eyes were pure black, and it seemed like it was staring into his soul. Suddenly, Jack remembered the vet's words. It's probably too late, but maybe if you hit it on the head with something heavy, it could knock it out. He grabbed a big rock and hit Shadow as hard as he could. And then suddenly, things started to go wrong. But the worst part was that these objects were usually possessed by demons. As the weeks went by, more and more bad things happened. And no matter what they did, they couldn't stop it. He kept having nightmares about the dog, but it wasn't a normal dog. In his dreams, it looked scary and demonic. It had sharp teeth and glowing red eyes, and every time it barked, Jack woke up in a cold sweat. His wife, Mary, was also troubled by her own nightmares. In hers, Shadow was always trying to attack her, but she could never scream for help. But what they didn't know was that those sounds weren't made by a dog, but by something evil. However, everything changed when Jack came across a stray dog. "What if it's sick or carrying diseases?" she complained. But Jack insisted. He couldn't just leave the dog alone after all they'd been through. The dog ate voraciously, but it still looked skinny. And when they tried to touch it, their fingers sank into its ribs. It was so thin that it felt like it could disappear at any moment. The couple named the dog Shadow and started to take care of it. They bathed it, brushed its fur, and tried to make it feel at home. It was a big dog with matted fur, but it was also one of the cutest dogs he'd ever seen, so he couldn't just leave it alone on the side of the road. Jack stopped his truck and slowly got out. The dog started barking, growling, and showing its teeth, but it quickly calmed down when it saw that Jack wasn't there to hurt it. After a few moments, Jack managed to get close enough to pet it, and once he did, the dog wagged its tail and licked his hand. The vet said that it was most likely due to an old injury. "It seems like someone threw something heavy at it," he explained. "It might be able to see, but it can't really feel like it." Jack and his wife felt sad. It was clear that Shadow had suffered a lot before they found it, and they promised themselves they'd do anything to make the dog happy. It seemed like they had formed a bond instantly, and Jack knew he had to take the dog home. But when he told his wife about his plans to keep the dog, she wasn't happy. "Another mouth to feed. Where will it sleep?" They took the dog home and gave it food and water. But soon they noticed something strange. Shadow wouldn't blink. At first they thought it was just tired from its journey, but after a few days they were worried. But there was something else that bothered them. And Jack would soon find out that the dog wasn't just a normal stray. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. As the days passed, things started to go wrong. Appliances broke down, pipes burst, and car tires went flat. One night, Jack couldn't take it anymore. He confronted Shadow and told it that it had to leave. When Jack told his wife about what had happened, she didn't believe him. They decided to take Shadow back to the vet, but he couldn't find anything wrong. Then one day, while searching online for answers, they found a website about cursed objects. After reading this, Jack and Mary knew that they had to get rid of Shadow as soon as possible. At first, Jack and Mary didn't notice anything. All of a sudden, they heard a loud crash. Before they could run away, Shadow lunged at them. It had sharp claws and teeth, and its eyes were glowing red. As Shadow approached them, Jack could see that it had no pupils. The dog let out a loud roar, but then it started to shake. It fell to the ground and didn't move. When they arrived, they could see that the damage Shadow had caused was immense. They never saw Shadow again, but they could still hear its screams in their nightmares. Years later, they moved away from Ashton and started a new life. This is a scary story to remind us that some animals are better off in the wild.